So just in short, remember the difference between a disability and impairment. Remember, a disability is a restriction or limitation with a work function, An impairment is a restriction or limitation with a bodily function or an activity of daily living function. That's the difference between a disability and an impairment. And the analogy that I like to give that really drives it home is if you take a professional pianist and you chopped off the tip of his pinky. Well, how big of a impairment would that be if you lost it? In other words, your ability to do activities of daily living and function. If you just lost the tip of your pinky finger, it'd be negligible to nothing. It'd be very small. You'd be able to get dressed, shower, bathe, all that stuff. But how much would it affect the professional pianist to lose the tip of his finger? It would be a huge disability. It'd be a very small impairment, but it'd be a huge disability. It would affect his ability to work dramatically. So that's a good way to remember the difference between a disability. The second part of your question is the disability is an administrative function. Non-physicians, administrators can give disability ratings, and they're typically relative to workers' compensation. An impairment rating is not an administrative function. It is solely a physician function. An impairment rating has to be done by a physician. Now, a chiropractor can do both. You can do an impairment rating. You can do a disability rating because any administrator can do it. I don't recommend you do any disability ratings. Number one, if you haven't been trained in it. Number two is to be really familiar with the ergonomics of that particular person's work. Well, that takes a lot of experience and knowledge to give disability ratings. And typically you need an impairment rating to give a disability rating. Typically, not always, but typically. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. So, okay. And it makes sense that you would need the impairment to have a disability rating.
But
it's even a small one.
You don't need it, but it's wanted. You should have it and it's wanted, but you don't need it to do a disability.
Okay.
You can do a work hardening analysis to see what they can and can't do relative to their work.
For the disability.
And that would not be an impairment rating, but there was a work hardening analysis. But to see what they can and can't do, you have to have some type of exam to see what they can and can't do, and that's either a work hardening analysis or an impairment rating. A lot of people will take the impairment rating, combine it with a work hardening analysis. In other words, that's taking the ergonomics of that job and seeing what they can or can't do. And then when you combine the impairment rating with the work hardening analysis, you get a really good disability rating.
Yep.